Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Pirate Rugby podcast. I'm your co-host, Enda Fahy, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, Hugh Griffin. Hugh, how are things, mate?
And I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to start this new project with you, talk about lots of rugby and share our passion with the masses.
Great stuff, mate. So, who are we and what is the Pirate Rugby podcast? We are two rugby enthusiasts with a passion for data and talking about the issues that the other podcasters aren't. Sadly, we have no affiliation whatsoever with the Cornish Pirates. We model ourselves more like the pirate radio stations from the 70s, broadcasting rugby content that others aren't talking about.
For example, did you know that Fiji, Tonga, Japan, Samoa, Uruguay, Chile, Namibia, and an Argentinian 15 all played international games this weekend? Or that the Scottish Rugby kicked off its first ever Summer Super Series? Most of these games weren't shown by broadcasters in the UK or Ireland, and many of the major rugby outlets barely even covered them. However, that's where we come in. We are committed to bringing you all things Tier 2 rugby, women's rugby, domestic competitions around the world that you may never have even heard about. If you've never heard of it, we'll talk about it. We will, of course, cover plenty of Tier 1 rugby. We will talk about the big news stories of the week. We'll talk about media rights and provide an overview of upcoming games and where people can watch them. Okay, so hopefully that's given people an idea of what kind of a show we're hoping to bring you here. So being a podcast, we obviously have bits, and our first bit is our rugby moment of the week. So Enda, what was your moment watching rugby this weekend?
There were so many, weren't there? But to be fair, for me, the biggest moment, my favorite moment was definitely Scott Barrett's tackle where he smashed Tate McDermott in half and set up the score. That really just set the stall out for New Zealand's performance, I think. And also you have to mention as well, I'm sure people listening and yourself, you've seen those clips of Barrett holding Nick White down and telling him to basically shut up, which is just absolutely brilliant. I think he did it on two separate occasions. Once when he had him pinned down on the grounds, and another clip that was shown when he was just standing up. So yeah, definitely the moment of the week for me. What about you?
That's what you want. That's what you want from your second row, isn't it? You don't often see people getting smashed on their own trial line and try given away. What a way to start a rugby match.
And look at who was on the bench as well in terms of Whitelock, So I think Barrett definitely justified his start.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's hear yours.
So my moment of the week is a bit different. My moment of the week is that seagull that was on the pitch during Scotland versus Italy, adding an extra number to Scotland's attack. If you watch the replay, he was a genuine option for the number 10. He was at the front of the pod, and he definitely got the crowds involved in a game that struggled to spark the imagination, I have to say. But he was not the only bird involved in a rugby match this week. Anybody watching the under-20s trophy down in Kenya, I believe it was, Nairobi, there was a stork in the crowd watching the game. So can you see, Scotland, we see your seagull, we raise you a stork. I don't think Scotland had any reply for that. So here marks the end of Scottish rugby. Can't even bring the best bird.
That's you in a nutshell, to be honest. You were probably watching that game live when you saw that as well. I bet you didn't even see that first on Twitter. It's probably you watch a crazy amount of tier two.
That was the best thing about the seagull as well, is the seagull was so engrossing that the commentator started commentating on it. There was a ruck going on over here, and the seagull was over here, and the commentator's going, that seagull doesn't look very well. Ever since he got stood on in that ruck, I don't think he's been quite with it. And he's like, yes, Scotland are lining up a shot goal, but just to bring you a seagull update. And apparently the seagull got removed from the pitch underneath a towel. So, but all the best to the seagull, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you certainly this week have picked. You set the stall up well with that rugby moment. I'm definitely regretting my Scott Barrett choice now, but I think we'll move on to the big rugby news of the week. So, for you, I suppose news just in. I'm sure you saw that the Ospreys are planning on. I think it's confirmed now that the Ospreys are going to play a game in London, and I believe I also saw that season ticket holders are not going to obviously get tickets for free. They're going to get maybe a 50% discount. Have you looked into this at all, or what are your thoughts on this?
So I've seen it, but going around on the app formerly known as Twitter. So the understanding is, so it's officially announced by the Ospreys, we're going to have a game in London. The location or the opposition for that game is not confirmed. It's going to be a URC game. And the rumor is that it's going to be against the Sharks at the Twickenham Stoop. You're correct. Season ticket holders do not get in for free. They get, the story at the moment is a reduced cost. The Ospreys are going with a story of your season ticket still gets you into our pre-season friendly against Cardiff, which hasn't gone down very well with the fans on social media. It's not a like-for-like replacement. So there's been a lot of reaction to this, as obviously you would expect. My point of view, as a non-going match-going fan for the Welsh regions, I live in the Midlands in England. I can't get to matches very often, so I'm always excited when they play matches closer to me, which is why I was so annoyed when the Scarlets didn't get Gloucester in the Challenge Cup, because that was a relatively short journey for me. So I have sympathy, and I believe and I know that there are fans of these teams who don't live locally to the teams, and so will, especially in one of the most densely populated cities in the world, in London, will be excited for it. I also know that the URC have been very open in the past about discussing wanting to put games on in London. I watched a podcast a few years ago where the CEO of the URC joked, there's more Stormers fans in London than there are Saracens fans. No, that's a bit of a low bar. But so it's true. So I think it's something that's been in the works for a while. So I think it will be a South African opposition. The interesting thing is, people talking about, we can debate that should a club stage a game in a different country, and that's a debate that everyone's going to come down on different sides of, and I completely see the argument for no, you should stage all your games within at least the area that you're supposed to represent. Fine. If that's your point of view, I can't argue with it. From the Ospreys' point of view financially, so the Ospreys don't own what was known as the Liberty, is now known as the Swansea.com Stadium. So they lease that. So from a financial point of view, there's probably not a ton of difference. There probably is a difference, but not a huge difference where they stage the game. They obviously would get a cut, I assume, with the ticket prices. Harlequins would get a cut because it's their stadium. But they wouldn't get any of the beer, the pies, or anything like that. But they don't get that in Swansea anyway. So from an attendance point of view, I think joining the Dots, this is mostly about South African fans, getting South African fans in more than it is about getting Welsh fans in. So to give you a bit of a perspective, the Stoop's capacity is just less than 15,000, I believe. Ospreys' average attendance up until round 12 of the URC last season, according to the data that I've got, was just less than 6,000. So let's say if this game draws 6,000, 7,000, you could argue it was a success. It was worth doing, because I think the Ospreys guys would have looked at the data and gone, we're not going to get that crowd in Swansea. What I will say about this, and I said this about some of the other fixture clashes, is again, Welsh rugby fans are being left to join the Dots themselves. If the Ospreys had come out and said, we're doing this because we think we've got this opportunity and we think it's the right thing to do in this time of things aren't going well, we need to try something different, whatever it is, they come out and tell us, and we can either take it or leave it. What they do, what Welsh rugby always does, it's not just an Ospreys thing, is they'll go, this is happening, and then zip, nothing else. And then fans are left to join the Dots themselves, and which is why on Twitter at the moment you'll see a lot of people saying a lot of things. And this is how the discontent starts. So
yeah, and they need to start marketing this game as well. I mean, Leinster do a very good job of that. Like, they play at least 2 fixtures, usually more, in the Aviva Stadium, and they always market those games very, very early on, and they always get 40 plus, maybe 35 for some games, but it's usually 40,000 plus in those games, and that's because they have time to really drive their marketing, and fans expect it. So that's a really interesting point, and it does make sense, I guess, on the massive South African diaspora in London as well. So it'll be interesting to see the attendance there. And it's interesting, isn't it, really, with the Premiership fixture being on in Wales as well. It's just a reversal. It's an odd scenario, but it's something different. I mean,
So
Welsh rugby's in a hole, so it's nice to see the Ospreys trying something different. So hopefully it works out.
So are we in conspiracy corner? So the English are putting on a game in Cardiff and the Welsh are putting on a game in London. What does that mean? You know, neither union is doing very well. Is this toes in water? We'll see.
We'll see. You'll have the tin hat on next podcast.
That's what I bring.
Moving on then, I suppose, to the other kind of big rugby news of the week, of the weekend, really. We had the Rugby Championship, obviously. Are New Zealand fully back, in your opinion?
I think so. I think when you saw them against, we were all shocked of what they did to South Africa in those first 20 minutes. Unbelievable. And I think against Australia weren't great opposition for them, but they were really in their comfort zone, especially in the last 20 minutes. They were playing the kind of rugby they've been playing in Super Rugby all season. They really had their mojo back. And I felt, a lot of people have said about the positives to take for Australia from that game. I feel like New Zealand were always in their comfort zone for every minute of that game. And unfortunately, because I was enjoying their downfall, they are, in my opinion, back.
I agree. I absolutely think they are. You and I have discussed this in private. Joe Schmidt's is all over this team. You can see his fingerprints all over the performances to date. And it really kind of moves us on to Australia, doesn't it? It just makes the whole... It's easy to just go Eddie bashing and say how poor Australia have been, and they have. But to me, this is on Rugby Australia as well. Like the decision, I think, to get rid of Rennie this close to World Cup cycle. Like, it makes sense maybe to replace him after World Cup, depending on the performance. But to throw Eddie in before with basically, I think, 5 competitive games, to me was just absolutely crazy. And I believe they'll go into the World Cup with 5 losses out of 5. I think that's a distinct possibility.
So you got New Zealand again this week, and then they got France again away before the World Cup. Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, what do you want to schedule a midweek against Ireland in Dublin? Maybe, yeah, I think as crazy as people said it was for England to sack Eddie Jones this close to a World Cup, it was even crazier for Australia to appoint him. I think if you do believe the Eddie Jones grand plan theories, the grand plan takes years to do, not weeks. It was a Hail Mary from Rugby Australia massively, in my opinion. And they, like I said, people are trying to take positives from the game. I can't take any positives for Australia from any of the games in this Rugby Championship. They've gone from one of the most feared teams in Rugby Union to comfortably the worst team in the Rugby Championship in the Southern Hemisphere. Mad.
And I think is there much just like we can discuss the Springboks game, but I know we want to get onto our tier 2 piece as well. But the real standout moment, I guess, that we have to address is the incident with Williams. News broke today, obviously, that the player has been cited, the Argentinian player. I don't think anybody's too surprised. My opinion on this is that I can absolutely see where Brace was coming from. It was a rugby incident. He did block down the ball, but then I can absolutely see the other side of the coin where he was potentially being reckless. And you do have a responsibility when you're on the field not to do something like that. So it'll be really interesting now to see what type of ban he gets. If he gets a ban, will he plead guilty? All these factors will come into it. So it'll be extremely interesting to see that.
What flavour biscuits will he bring to the hearing, etc.
Exactly.
So what's interesting is he's been cited under law 9.11. So dangerous play. Players must not do anything that is reckless or dangerous to others, including leading with the elbow or forearm, or jumping into or over a tackler. So 2 things that law mentions: leading with the elbow and jumping into a tackle. The Argentinian player did neither of those. So the thing that I think, and I agree with you, and the thing that Brace has seen is that the charge down was successful. and it's legal to jump to do a charge down. So from my point of view, the Argentinian hasn't broken any laws in the action that he's taken on the pitch. What we have seen, though, in rugby union is that they punish outcomes, not actions. So a classic case would be taking out someone in the air. When we see a penalty given for taking out someone in the air, the sanction is decided by how the player lands. The player who has committed the foul play, taking the player out of the air, has no control over how the player lands, broadly, unless they've gone, I reckon if I hit him like that, he'll land on his shoulder. They haven't done that. So there is precedent in rugby for punishing the outcome, not the action. So maybe that's what they've done. That law is vague. They say that's what's make them laws and not rules in rugby, is that there is interpretation. So I think they could swing the argument that he should be banned. It was a horrible, horrible incident. It's one of those things that when you're watching live and you think, cut the camera away, don't need to be seeing this. Yeah, I can only think what it was like for his friends and family watching it on TV. Must be awful. His first cap as well. Was his first start or first cap?
His first start.
Right. Okay.
And he thoroughly deserved that start as well. So it's really, really unfortunate, Williams. And it was great to see those images of him sitting up.
Yeah.
In the second half. So wish him all the best. It still baffles me. I saw a press release this week that said he could be back playing in 2 weeks. I think that's absolutely just crazy. That needs to be addressed. But that's a conversation for another day. But just really disappointing for him, obviously. But it'll be fascinating following that whole story and seeing what's next, really. And moving on then, I guess, to Scotland and Italy. I didn't catch much of this game, to be honest. But with my Irish cap on, I was fascinated to see how Ben Healy got on. Checked after the game. He was player of the match. No surprise. He kept Joey Carberry out of the Munster team. So, fair play to the guy,
He kicked a penalty against the Scarlets he kicked a penalty against the Scarlets a couple of years ago from about, I don't know, the game was infinitely, he's kicked it from about Blackwood or something, and it's gone over. He got man of the match basically for doing spiral bombs. He would stand in his own 22, he would line up a spiral bomb, smack it, and it would go to the other 22, and that got him man of the match. It's pre-World Cup warm-ups. They're never good games to watch. They're never exciting. It's always experimental teams playing half of their playbook, if that. So, yeah. And also, I didn't catch very much of it because it clashed with the Rugby Championship game, which was crazy. I don't know how they managed to do that. Guys, check the TV guide. They need to follow you on Twitter, mate, along with 1,200 other people, and go, oh, hang on. There's South Africa versus Argentina going on at the same time. Maybe we'll start an hour early. But no. 2 different matches on 2 different broadcasters at the same time.
So speaking of broadcasting, I guess the next big story of the last couple of weeks has been Viaplay, kind of with a left field decision to pull out of the UK. It's left a lot of us kind of in limbo. They signed a 4-year agreement, so they're 2 years through that now. So there are 2 years left in that agreement to broadcast every single URC game in the UK. It seems at the moment that they're going to carry on broadcasting. They're looking to sell. They're certainly looking to pull out of the market of the UK. That's what we know for sure.
Yeah, we should
say. But they're still selling passes.
Should say for people who aren't familiar with yourself, Ender, that broadcasting is your thing. So you run the Rugby TV Guide Twitter account, which is a great service. Everyone should jump on and follow it. So you kind of follow these things quite closely. So your understanding then is that they have an obligation to fulfill the contracts.
That's correct. Yeah. So they're not going anywhere. They're not going to pull out before this season, but I'm sure there are discussions going on behind the scenes in terms of whether or not they could sell on the rights to another party, whether that they could partner with somebody else. It all kind of remains to be seen.
Might do.
It is indeed, yeah. So there are a couple of options really, but the ultimate goal is to pull out, but they're not just pulling out without fulfilling their obligations. But from reading between the lines and from everything I've read so far, it looks like they won't be here beyond the coming season. Potentially they could be gone midway through this coming season if they can get somebody else to come in. The URC does also have that backup in terms of URC TV. I mean, the service is active in certain territories around the world. It's actually active in the Republic of Ireland. even though Premier Sports have the rights here as well, and RTE and TG Car to certain games. So the URC always has that in their back pocket as well, but I'm sure they want to keep it on broadcast television as well. Like, that is important. I mean, we all know that sports broadcasting is, arguably going towards streaming, but the traditional linear broadcasters are absolutely hanging in there. I mean, if you look at the NFL, and those 10-year contracts that they've signed, they're not going exclusively streaming. Traditional broadcasts are here to stay for the foreseeable future. So we'll see what's come back. Nothing. What's really interesting that the URC haven't come out with a press release. Neither have Viaplay. There hasn't really been much, especially in terms of what's happening with the URC. A lot of this is speculation. So we'll wait and see. But by all means, I think come next season there will definitely be a new broadcaster in the UK anyway. But we'll watch this space anyway. We'll provide regular updates throughout the next couple of months and next season. So moving on then to our next section. I know this is one you're probably really excited about. You're going to do a deep dive. You're going to look at the wonderful world of rugby kits and tell people a little bit more about them. So Hugh, give me an overview of what you've discovered in your deep dive into this.
So anybody who follows me on Twitter has seen me tweeting endlessly and doing some quite long, in-depth threads about rugby kits. It all started from a couple of months ago when Munster released that amazing new retro kits that they got Conor Murray to model and everything. It blew everyone's minds. I'll see if I can find it. Hang on. I'll keep talking while I Google. I couldn't find it the other day. So they launched this and I retweeted it and I said, this is amazing. I love it so much. I wish Welsh rugby regions did the same thing. Or I might have used slightly fruitier language than that. But that's basically the gist of what I was saying. Here we go. So this isn't the actual one. The actual one is made by Adidas, but this is broadly what it looks like. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. There you go. You see that?
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a knockoff version, but this is broadly what it looks like. So I said, why don't Welsh rugby clubs do this kind of thing? So if I give you another example, so this is Cardiff's rugby merch. I'm sorry for picking on you, Cardiff. I know you haven't got much going for you at the moment, but this is your merch for last season. As you can see, you can have a grey hoodie with a Cardiff badge on it, or you can have a Cardiff badge on a grey hoodie. That's pretty much it. So I expressed that frustration via Twitter, and this tweet went a bit mad, and I got interaction not only from fans agreeing with me, but I got interaction from people who worked at regions who wanted to explain to me why I may be a little bit off. So I did that. So I went into basically an investigative mode, and I spoke to fans, I spoke to people who work at clubs. I've just been speaking to players recently, and I've spoken to a retailer as well to try and get an idea of why some clubs, such as the Welsh regions, offer the limited options that they do, whereas other clubs, and I'm going to use Moana Pacifica for an example here, why Moana Pacifica are able to offer this kind of thing. So can you still see this, mate?
Absolutely.
So this is Moana Pacifica's treasure trove of absolutely unbelievable rugby stash. And I look upon this with great envy as a Welsh rugby fan. Here's Stade Francais. I encourage anyone to go on the Stade Francais website if you need cheering up. If you want something that's pink and got Stade Francais written on it, say no more. You can literally get watches, you can get rulers, you can get pencil cases, you can get fanny packs, anything you want with Stade Francais written on it. So that's kind of what I wanted to jump into. And so that has culminated in me being, I'm going to claim it until someone tells me otherwise, the world expert on rugby merchandising.
And on that as well, I do see that you do love to run your Twitter polls. Has there been a clear? I know there are so many different suppliers out there. We've seen Leinster rather controversially, well, according to Twitter, certainly controversially, they've haven't renewed their deal with Adidas. They've gone to Castore. We've all seen some hilarious mess ups and some hiccups that Castore have made. But according to your polls, which supplier is the most popular, would you say? Like, is there a clear winner here, or who do fans, which brand do fans really want to get behind and support?
So it's interesting, and I ran a bit of an experiment on Twitter. So I asked which people's favorite brands were, and I gave people a choice between 4. I said Nike, Adidas, Canterbury, or Macron. So and people voted for mostly Canterbury, which is interesting because Canterbury currently don't supply very many teams. In terms of international teams, I think they supply Ireland and Japan, and I think that's it. Whereas Macron currently are the biggest supplier in rugby. They supply well over 35 international teams. They will be the biggest supplier of kits at the World Cup. And then obviously Nike and Adidas are the big brands. They're the ones that everybody knows from other stuff as well. So Canterbury finished top by a long way, and Macron finished bottom. However, I ran another poll and I gave people a choice between 4 rugby tops, specific rugby tops: Portugal, Ireland, the All Blacks, and the Springboks as this year's rugby kits. And Portugal's won. Portugal's kit is made by Macron. So there you go. So it's very much a perception in people's heads. Whereas the Irish kit came bottom. That's made by Canterbury, which everyone said was their favorite brand. So I think the whole Canterbury thing, and I'm pretty sure if I put Cotton Traders on there, they would have won. It's a heritage thing. People think, you think rugby jerseys, you think Canterbury and Cotton Traders. You might think Nike and Adidas for some other things. But it's kind of a prejudice that people have. My opinion is that Nike do the nicest kits. I've got a big box of kits. So I started collecting kits. So I'll just show you my collection. Hang on. You see
Wow.
that? That's mostly rugby kits. There's some football kits in there as well. This is my current favorite. So this is my Toulon top, retro Toulon top made by Nike. It's not just the look of it; it's also the fit and the feel of the materials. I think that the if we call them heritage brands like Nike and Adidas, the huge brands, they've obviously put a lot more R&D into these things, and for me, they're a bit more refined. Macron stuff is less defined. So I've done a lot of research on Macron. They are relatively new. They started out as a importer in Italy of American brands like Nike and Adidas, if they are American. And they only started doing their own stuff this century, and they only started doing customers outside of Italy in 2005, and that was in football first. So they've really come in and make a big noise very quickly in rugby. And they supply so many kits, they even supply referees. So if you go on World Rugby's website, they will say official partner Macron. So I think Macron stuff is yet to win people over. The common complaint you get from people is the sizing on Macron is very poor. You normally have to go 2 sizes up to what you normally are. Is what I've heard from some people, more than one person. But yeah, so that's kind of the brands that people have their prejudices of what they like. But I think it's more really kit by kit, it's design by design.
Yeah. South Africa have definitely, for me, nailed it out of the park with their jersey for the upcoming World Cup. Also, Fiji, as usual, have an amazing kit. And that bucket hat, I'm sure you've seen it do the rounds on Twitter as well. It looks absolutely fabulous. Only the Flying Fijians could pull that off.
But I'm glad that you made those 2 examples. I want to show you something. So sharing again. So can you see that? So what I'm showing you now is on a website called Rugby Stuff. This is Nike's current rugby gear. You see that?
Yeah, can indeed.
Okay, so what you got here is the Fiji one that you referenced. You got the Springbok one down here. Now there's a bucket hat here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, I can't find it. I've seen the bucket hat and it's there. What you've also got is Toulon's one here. And what you've also got, there's Toulouse's one, there's a Racing 92 one down here. Nike have pulled a bit of a trick here. All of their jerseys are the same. You're thinking, Hugh, no, they're not. Yes, they are. So if I show you this one, look, here's the Fiji one. You can see a nice looking fitting top, black ends to the sleeves, got the black collar with a white button. Here is the Springbok one. This is the kids one, but it doesn't matter. It's the same. You can see nice fitting with coloured sleeves, a collar and a white button at the top. I'll show you Racing's one. Oh, there's Toulon's one. Nice fitting top, collar, ends on the sleeves, white button. Racing 92, the same. So, people like to throw the accusation. Keep pressing that. People like to throw the accusation that the cheaper brands are, it's just like cookie cutter kits, right? Nike do it, Adidas do it. It's just that they do a nice kit and they nail it and then they use it. Macron, for example, do a lot more variants in their kit designs in terms of colors and sleeves and things than Nike or Adidas. It's just that Nike have hit a formula and they're sticking to it.
And what are we looking at in terms of cost here? Like, is there a major difference from the research that you've done between, say, a Springboks jersey made by Nike compared to an Irish jersey made by Canterbury? Like, or are they all kind of roughly retailing at the same price? Obviously, given there's a difference in between Ireland and the UK in terms of currency and all that. But what have you noticed about that during your research?
Most jerseys are between 70 and 80 pounds, most international and most club ones. Some unions or some customers have decided that they want to go above that. So England's kit is currently retailing for 115, 120 pounds, which is made by Umbro. Ireland's kit, I believe, is 105 pounds in GBP. I'm not sure what it is in euros. South Africa is an interesting one. If you buy it in pounds, it's 70, 80 pounds, pretty much in line with everything else. If you fly to South Africa, you can get it for about 40 quid because the South African rand, it does not do very well. So if you look, I think in my research, the cheapest kit I found was, I want to say the Stormers kit, which you can get, if you go to South Africa, you can get it for the equivalent of about 30 quid, which is a replica jersey, which is easily the cheapest one. So it might be more financial. I'm not a financial advisor. I think you have to say that when you're on the internet. But if you wanted to get on a plane and buy a jersey from South Africa itself, it might be cheaper than actually buying it online in the UK.
Well, certainly the way things are going anyway, I wouldn't be one bit surprised. So really, to round things up, like, would you have your best World Cup kit that you've seen so far? I know we've touched on kind of the best or worst kit suppliers. I mean, for you, who's got the best World Cup kit going in to the 2023 World Cup? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say I'm completely, Nike have got a grip on me at the moment. I'd say it's either the Springboks or Argentina. I'd probably go for Argentina. I think it's a really classy look. I think some of the Macron stuff, I know people are very fond of the Italy and the Portugal stuff. I don't think Canterbury have done very well with the Islands of Japan bits. And I'm interested to see what the All Blacks jersey looks like on. So I think the jersey they've been wearing so far in the Rugby Championship hasn't been their World Cup jersey. It's been a pre-one. And obviously the World Cup one got a bit of controversy because it had all of the leaves and things on it. I'm interested to see what that looks like actually when players are wearing it. So for me, number one is Argentina.
Great stuff. And I guess that moves us on. So to our new section, which is Tier 2 Roundup, and where we look at basically the results that you mightn't have even seen from the weekend. So I don't know if you want to take us through the first few here, Hugh, and that you've come across.
So Pacific Nations Cup, or whatever it's called, some people are calling it just World Cup warm-up games. We don't know if it's actually called the Pacific Nations Cup this year. It has been in the past. Essentially, it's a tournament being played between Japan, Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. So watching it hasn't been easy. I've had to find some creative ways of watching it because it's not on TV here in the UK or Ireland. But basically, at the moment, Fiji are on a roll. Fiji have won their first 2 games against Tonga and Samoa quite easily, looking to take a bit of that Fijian Drua momentum into the World Cup. Japan were probably the better side in the first game against Samoa, which they lost, and then they beat Tonga. And they looked quite good in that Tonga game. They scored some nice tries. They looked much more back to how they are. They've been quite poor this World Cup cycle. Japan they haven't played very many games, and when they have played games, they've normally played France or New Zealand, so that doesn't help. But yeah, so they're looking a bit more back to how they were. Samoa and Tonga are still very much gelling. They've gotten all their All Blacks and Australian players back with the new eligibility rules, which we all love. But the teams aren't quite clicking yet. They're playing some good stuff. Tonga beat Australia A in a warm-up game, but it's taken a moment to catch fire. And then the last game I'll talk about is Uruguay beat Chile in what I assume was a thrilling game, but I couldn't find a stream of it anywhere. Finished 26-25 to Uruguay. Uruguay were leading easily in the first half, and then Chile came storming back, and it finished very much nail-biting time, squeaky bum time for the Uruguayans. But I tell you what, the Uruguayans, I reckon, are going somewhere. I think they're only on the up in rugby at the moment. I'm looking forward to watching them in the World Cup.
Yeah, look, it's and you touched on it briefly. Like it's incredibly frustrating this year not being able to watch these games live in the UK or Ireland. Previously, World Rugby would have shown a lot of these games on their website, but for whatever reason, they have decided to do it. They haven't decided to do it this year. We don't know why, but thanks to Kenya Rugby's YouTube channel, we've been able to watch the under-20s trophy. So the second tier of the under-20s rugby. I mean, this has taken place for the last 2 weeks in Nairobi, Kenya, as you mentioned earlier. It featured Hong Kong, USA, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Samoa, Uruguay, Spain, and Scotland. In the final rounds, USA beat Hong Kong for 7th place. Zimbabwe beat Kenya, for 5th. Scotland beat Samoa in the bronze playoff. And the big one, Spain beat Uruguay in an excellent final to secure promotion to the under-20s main championship next time round. And this is their first time in their history. I mean, what a moment for Spain. I don't know if you got a chance to watch any of the highlights or even watch that game live, Hugh, but what a moment, I think, for Spanish rugby.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, Spain qualified theoretically for the last 2 World Cups and obviously lost their place because of eligibility issues, which is a shame, especially to get caught twice in a row for that. It's disappointing. But an epic game between Spain and Uruguay. It was a proper test match, proper, like, nice rugby. You know, some of these games is a bit sevens-y. Not that sevens is bad, but it's not like, you know, test match intensity that we come to see it. But this was like really high quality rugby, I thought. I think both of these sides would have been well deserving of a place in the under-20 championship proper. All of the games up until this were quite one-sided. Zimbabwe smashed Kenya, USA smashed Hong Kong. Quite literally, they had a red card as well. But yeah, Spain, it was very tight going into the last 5 minutes, and then Spain got a lovely up and under court pass to the flanker. I think it was the number 6, who then ran in the corner, secured the promotion. So massively excited to see Spain moving forward. And I think Uruguay, like I said, would have been equally deserving of going up with them. A real treat to watch.
Brilliant stuff. And then also there was kicked off this weekend was the Scottish Super 6. I believe that you watched the game on Friday night. There are 2 games essentially every weekend over the next couple of weekends that are going to be broadcast. One on Scottish Rugby's YouTube channel, and that will actually be broadcast in the UK as well as worldwide. So that's brilliant. And also some games, 1 per weekend, is also going to be broadcast on the BBC's iPlayer. for customers in the UK, but it'll also be simulcast on Scottish Rugby's YouTube channel as well. And I believe you watched the game on Friday night. Tell me about it.
I did. I watched Heriot versus the Bears, so I'd never watched Super Six before. So this is a summer series they're doing, which I believe they've never done before. You are right in saying that there are 2 games televised, but there are actually 3 games per weekend. There's a new team in it, so it's now the Super 7, I guess. They haven't officially called it that, but so it's the new team is called Future 15 or Future XV, depending on how you read it. Which I'm led to believe is essentially the Scottish under-20s team, but it can't have been this weekend because the Scottish under-20s was too busy beating Samoa. So I'm not quite sure how that worked. But yeah, so I was very impressed by Heriot. It's when you watch it on not TV, on YouTube, it looks a bit like university rugby matches. But I thought Heriot were very good. They're number 13. Shades of Jonathan Davis with the scrum cap, scored a couple of tries, very nice. I thought he was the player of the match for me. So I'm looking forward to getting my fix from that, because I love rugby on a Friday night, sitting down on the sofa rather than going outside and talking to people. Sit on the sofa on my own, thanks, watch a rugby match. Yeah, like I say, Heriot's absolutely battered the Bears. Boromir Bears, I think they're called. Super Six is definitely, or whatever it's called now, something that we need to do a deep dive on in the future, because reading the Wikipedia page, it's not short of a little controversy either, which we like.
We'll certainly get into that on a later pod. And to be honest, it's great as well to see a game on the iPlayer, because that's easily accessible for people, and also on YouTube as well, instead of just being on a web browser or whatnot. So that's great for that reason. And that, I guess, moves us on to the final section of the pod, which is basically going to be a feature that we're going to have every week, discussing your TV guide for the upcoming fixtures, where you can watch games, what competitions are being shown, who's playing who. And one competition that is kicking off next weekend is the National Provincial Championship. This is New Zealand's championship. And Sky Sports have the rights to this as well. It looks like they're going to broadcast up to 2 fixtures per weekend, quite similar to their Currie Cup coverage. So
is this the New Zealand version of the Currie Cup, essentially? Is that what this is?
Exactly. Yeah, it's their primary domestic competition. So it's the next level up from this would be your Super Rugby sides. So What's really interesting about the National Provincial Championship as well, or NPC, is that you'll even see some All Blacks the odd weekend who aren't playing for the Super Rugby sides, who are looking for game time, coming back from major injuries. I know Michael Bent is currently playing for Taranaki, former Irish international, former Leinster player. So there's some really interesting players playing in this championship. So it's going to be exciting to watch these teams. And it's brilliant that we have coverage of it as well. So this coming Friday on Sky Sports Action at 8:35 in the morning, for anyone who's going to be up, they're going to be showing Taranaki v Counties Manukau. And also on Saturday morning at 8:35, Northland v Canterbury is going to be shown, and that's also on Sky Sports Action. So 2 games to look forward to there.
Is that UK and Ireland?
So that's the UK and Ireland, exactly. So it'll be available on Sky Sports, and obviously on now Sky's streaming service. What else is coming up next weekend? We have the Rugby Championship, obviously ended this past weekend, but we obviously do have the second Bledisloe game. Unfortunately, that game is going to be on at 3:30 Saturday morning. And again, that's going to be on Sky Sports Action as well. So for anybody who wants to get up early, it'll be an interesting game, certainly. Hopefully it's not as one-sided as the game in Australia. So that's your Saturday morning fix. Then
Remember, guys, if you want to impress people on Twitter, you don't have to get up for the game. You just have to watch the highlights before anybody else.
That's exactly it. And we're also going to have the second game between Argentina and the Springboks on Saturday evening. What else do we have coming up? That's pretty much it in terms of your main fixtures for the weekend. The Under-20s World Championship is over. And there are other international games on, warm-up games, but as we've mentioned previously in the pod, these games aren't being broadcast in Ireland or the UK, which is definitely disappointing. However, we do actually have the other World Cup warm-up games that are on. So there are a number of games that Ireland are playing Italy, and there are a couple of other fixtures on as well. If you're in the UK, you can watch all of these games on Amazon exclusively. If you're in the Republic of Ireland, you can watch the games not involving Ireland on Premier Sports, or you can stream them on Now. And if you're looking to watch just the Irish games, RTE will be broadcasting those games exclusively in the Republic of Ireland. And again, if you're in the UK, those games will be on Amazon. And just touching on Amazon as well, I know there's been a lot of chat, obviously, with Viaplay pulling out of the UK market. One of the reasons a lot of people are in favor of Amazon is because of the low cost and everything that's associated with Amazon. They do a very good job, I think, on broadcasting as well. But one issue that some people have is just the discoverability on Amazon. If you log into, like, there were multiple people on
Yeah, I
Twitter
saw
who couldn't
people
even find
complaining
the
about
game,
it.
who couldn't find the Scotland
So
and
I
Italian
found
game.
it okay. I don't know whether this was an Ireland thing or not. At the top of the app I have on my phone, on the iOS app, it has sport. So I clicked on sport, tapped on sport, and it was just there. It came up, look, rugby match. So I was okay with it. But did other people not have that ability?
Yeah, other people just didn't realize that, or if they had the Amazon app on their TV, they just opened Amazon and it was just buried in the content there. So it's not the first
Yeah.
thing you see.
So I cast from my phone. So I guess if people were searching on a smart TV, that wasn't there.
Yeah, but exactly, and that's one of the criticisms I think that people have on Amazon, and the reason why some leagues are potentially reluctant to go for Amazon is because of that discoverability issue. But they are, of course, they're Amazon. They're in the they do have a specific sports app planned, and so that is in development at the moment, which will hopefully improve the discoverability. But I thought that was an interesting piece that I saw over the weekend. A number of people were complaining about that. And I think that is it in terms of rugby fixtures, unless I'm forgetting any. You seen any other games that are coming up?
Well, the only thing for me on Saturday is that I won't be able to watch Wales versus England on TV because the current plan is that I'll be in the stadium. So
very good.
I'll live tweet and tell everybody what happens.
I think we all know what's going to happen. Actually, we don't all know what's going to. We don't know what's going to happen. Who knows? To be honest.
No,
Who's
I
going to
don't
come
know.
out on
I
top?
wouldn't even speculate. I wouldn't back Wales to win, but I wouldn't back England to win either. Who's worse? Let's find out this Saturday live.
And so, look, if you want to find out more about this weekend's upcoming fixtures, you can follow me on Twitter at Rugby TV Guide. And look, I think that's us really. And thanks for tuning in, Hugh. Where can people find out more about your rugby kit analysis, and where can they follow you?
So you can find me at Hugh Griffin Rugby on Twitter, HUWGRIFFIN, or you can follow this podcast on Twitter, the Pirate Rugby Pod. Just at the Pirate Rugby Pod, it will come up. We will be sharing on our accounts all the links to everything, so hopefully you can find it. Yeah, thank you for listening, guys. Thank you for listening to number 1. It's only forwards from here. Let's do it, guys.